I'm very happy to be here today. I spent about a year in San Antonio on a sabbatical. The case that she was just talking about, it was the David Temple case. And I did have the pleasure of cross-examining Ms. Sigler for, I think it's 5 days. And I don't want to do anything fun for 5 days in a row, so took a break and am back in Houston, and I'm real happy to be back. I'm going to confess something. So I woke up this morning and I was standing on my front porch trying to think of a slick way not to come here today. I have a case that's going to trial in Waco on Monday. Involves some bikers. And I got a call to go to head out there just for a quick conference, and I was told to go by and pick something up at the police department. Which leads me to this. So, can we all agree that the best thing you can do for trial, any part of it is preparation, right? Of course. And personally, I don't go to trial unless my eyeballs have seen everything, and I mean every piece of paper. Before I knew much law, I knew I could always outwork my opponent. I could always do that. What I lacked in intellect, or I could make up for in sweat equity, okay? So I'm going to skip to the very end. Can y'all see that? That's a banker's box of about 9 inches of offense reports. We pick a jury Monday. They're corrected. I don't know what a corrected offense report is, because the ones I had were final. So that's what I picked up yesterday. Or came back to Harris County with, and then I was preparing to come here and talk to you fine folks about preparing for cross-examination. And flipping out on the inside, how in the hell am I going to get through these papers? I don't even know what's in them. And that's when I started thinking, how am I going to, I can't go do this. I need to be reading these papers. I've got to be reading these papers. And then I thought about what my presentation is, what my philosophy is about a cross-examination, right? And my philosophy about a cross-examination is you have to get to what's really going on, right? What's really going on with this person on the stand. Because that's not possible. That is absolutely not possible. And it's part of a pattern, certainly in the case that I'm in now, because the state doesn't want to go to trial. And so what do you do when they're going to do their dead level best to make sure you are not prepared? Their dead level best. What do you do then? You let your client sit on bond for 6 years with an ankle monitor? There's no justice in that. And Miss Janie Maselli's here. I go to anything she talks at. And what I've learned is that constitutional rights are like one big bouquet. You don't have to pick one flower. You don't have to pick one right. You get the whole bouquet at the same time. And so, my client has a right to a speedy trial. He's got a right to effective assistance of counsel. We'll be going to trial on Monday. We will. In the face of that, I believe the most effective cross-examination is crawling in the skin in the person in front of you, figuring out, understanding, and I mean on a human level, not that lawyer brain level, understanding what motivates this person to be here. Think of your nightmare witnesses, right? I used to hate to take dope cases because inevitably it would be my client, often thrice convicted felon, right, in a swearing match with a police officer. It was just a losing battle, right? That was my nightmare witness. That was my nightmare witness because I've got the police officer that jurors will tell us often, are far more credible than any accused, any defendant. Why is he there? None of us, it's implausible to accept that cops became cops because they want to lie and put innocent people in prison. That doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense. At some point, you have to ask them, why did you become a cop? I'd venture to say most of them did it because they want to do the right thing, because they want to make sure justice is served. That was one of the first questions I asked Ms. Ziegler, was just that. Why'd you become a prosecutor? And in listening to them, that witness, that law enforcement officer specifically, describe what motivated them to choose this career, it's beautiful. Because there's it's much like my commitment to criminal defense, to defending citizens accused. They're, as misguided as it is at times, equally committed to making sure the bad people go to prison, right? And if you believe fundamentally in your heart of hearts that the person in front of you, put an 8.5-month pregnant woman on her knees and shot her in the back of the head with a shotgun, if you believe that to be true, maybe those Brady rules aren't so bright. I'm not justifying, right? It's not a justification. It's offensive. It's criminal. But as lawyers, our job is to tell a story, and it's not just our client's story. We have to tell our witnesses' story as well. How did they get there? What experience did they have that's brought them into this courtroom today to testify the way that they're going to testify? And it's beautiful, really. It's almost like this subtext that's going on. If the first thing you can get out of your witness's mouth is that fundamental dogged belief, right, that this guy is guilty. Thank you for that. And now every person in the room knows every investigative step that the person in front of us took was viewed through that lens, so we can accept that they're not going to be objective, that there was nothing objective about that investigation. And it also allows the jury to do it in a way that isn't, nobody wants to skewer a cop. They serve and protect, right? It's a dangerous job, and we don't pay them enough. So if you can get to that place with your witness, about why they're there, and get them to make those admissions. Because, does anybody disagree? I just threw out this philosophy about why police officers might become police officers. Is there anyone here that disagrees with that idea that at the end of the day, they're really just trying to do the right thing? There's the outlying turds, but I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the lion's share of them. Is there any disagreement from anyone in here? Right. Ultimately, there is more that we have more in common than we don't. And so if you can get that admission from your witness, your jury's going to see that, and they don't need you to spoon feed it. Then you can just talk about that investigation. And so what used to be an outright statement of this fact means this, you've just gifted your jury with the ability to see the person in front, to see this witness for what it is, and it is anything but objective. You started off with a goal in mind, and everything that you've done since then is to achieve that goal. So here's my banker box. I'm going to go straight back to my office after this and start, I don't know, I might just roast hot dogs on it. I haven't decided yet. Banker's box, who does that? So since that was heavy on my mind, I thought I would start with the preparation component. Obviously, we prepare, right? You want to know what your witness is. You want to know everything imaginable, right, to attack, to undermine what's going to come out of this witness's mouth. We can't do that all the time. So cross-examination. A lot of times, I don't have witnesses to call to the stand. The only way I'm going to get evidence in is through cross-examination. That's it. And that is not an easy task, right? I want you to think back to law school. And when I got out of law school, there were some fundamental truths that had just been beaten into me. Number one, you don't ever ask a question that you don't know the answer to. Y'all heard that before? How do you do that? Isn't the nature of questioning you to discover something that I don't know? And so that one puzzled me in law school, and it still puzzles me. I don't know how to do that, and if someone could teach me, I would appreciate that. Caveat being, there are some big potholes that all of us know that we need to avoid, but at the end of the day, I think we need to be comfortable with this idea that we don't have all the answers, much like the jury. I think it gives you an opportunity to identify with your jurors, and if you think of it as you're both on this truth-seeking mission, you'll get there. You'll get there. So in my opinion, a lot of effective cross-examination came from unlearning the stuff that had been beaten into me in law school. And that was the biggest one, right? That was the biggest one. Second one, only ask yes or no questions. I don't know how to do that either. And we're fortunate now because our social scientists have started doing research on juror decision making, right? And what we know is that criminal defense lawyers accept it. We start off at a credibility deficit. We absolutely do. We didn't create it. We don't perpetuate it. Well, most of us don't. But we start off with a credibility deficit. Those folks that are sitting out in the audience as we're doing voir dire, what do you think they think? What's going through? Somebody give me just a gem that you've heard during voir dire about that opinion of defense lawyers. Yes.
Just say anything.
For what reason? Right. That rapist, the baby raper, coming to your neighborhood, compliments of Casie Gotro. So get over that hurdle and then get into your voir dire and try to defend your client. So we have this credibility deficit. Used to scare the daylights out of me. Used to scare me. It made me, I shook. I felt that in my knees. And then from my knees, it would go to my diaphragm, and then it would shake, and then my voice, it was almost like my speaking voice had a vibrato in it. Because I was afraid of the judgment that I was getting from these people. And when I started talking about it and asking them about it, and I mean getting just the really extreme examples during voir dire about what they thought about me, the most amazing thing happened. My reasonable folks, oh, wait a minute. Well, that's not true. She's not doing that. She's got a job. And so it was almost like the cream bubbling to the top. They start pushing the crazies off their island. The jury is alienating. This panel is alienating people that have got these prejudiced ideas about defense attorneys. And it was amazing to watch because it's not me instructing them on what my job is and my constitutional obligation to do these things, and you better be lucky you're not charged, right? They're doing it themselves, and by the time voir dire's done, your group's almost formed. But I think we do a disservice if we don't address that elephant in the room, because it's there. And whether you talk about it or not, that pachyderm will follow you all the way to the verdict. So, talk about it. Might make your voice stop shaking if it does. I love this one in here because you got these two tenets, right? Never ask a question that you don't know the answer to. Always ask yes or no questions. And now we're going to war. You've just been dropped behind enemy lines. It's a dangerous foray. Things could go terribly, terribly, terribly wrong for you. Like you're not nervous enough. Let's just add a little bit more pressure. Right? I like that one too because there's something clinical. You elicit correct and complete testimony. Is there anyone here that can do that? Because I'd like to know that trick myself. I talked about this earlier. I've seen, as a baby lawyer, I would just go to the criminal courthouse and haunt the courtrooms to see who was in trial. And then I'd go to the clerk's office and pirate pleadings of lawyers smarter than me so that I could pass those ideas off as my own. But just watching how Tyrone Moncrief I see back there. Watching Tyrone do a cross-examination is its own semester of law school. Watching Dick or Mark Bennett was amazing. I had no idea how I was ever going to do those things. I cannot affect Tyrone's baritone voice. Mine's a little gravelly, but I can't do that. This harkens back to the how do you combat this credibility deficit that we start off with? Well, since I can't be Dick DeGuerin and I can't be Tyrone Moncrief, that's my favorite one. It's authenticity, folks. It's authenticity. I like the duck. Authenticity. But I like the ducks. Have y'all seen the Peeps lineup? It's like the little Easter Peeps, the spongy candies, and then there's the one real duck like right in the middle, and he's like, oh, this is bullshit, right? You have to be authentic. You have to be the best you, right? I mean, if you think about why your phone rings on a Saturday afternoon or a Tuesday afternoon for somebody that wants to spend time with you, okay? It's not to get lectured at. It's because they like your company, because you're easy to talk to. Maybe you're a good listener. And it's that authenticity. It's that authenticity that beats the bullshit that the panel tells us about what they think of us, right? It just does. It just does. You have to be willing to fail, to be embarrassed. I know that hamstrung me in a way like nothing else early in my career. I was so afraid that Casie Gotro was going to embarrass Casie Gotro. And what would her peers think of Casie Gotro? We are not the stars of this show. It is our client.